Jake Harrison rubbed his tired eyes and looked at the screen again. The numbers still did not make sense. His coffee had gone cold hours ago, but he could not move away from the control panel. Something was very wrong with what the sensors were showing him. He worked on Ceres Alpha, a big mining station floating in the asteroid belt. For 12 years, he had watched the same boring readings every day. Ships coming and going, rocks spinning in space. Nothing ever changed out here between Mars and Jupiter. Until today. The screen showed hundreds of objects that had just appeared at the edge of the solar system. They were too big to be asteroids and too many to be a trading fleet. Jake had never seen anything like it before. His hands shook as he reached for the emergency communication button. Lisa Torres was having a quiet morning on Luna Base when the alarm started screaming. She dropped her breakfast and ran to the command center. The young officer at the communications desk looked pale and scared. "Admiral, we have a priority message from Ceres Alpha," the officer said. His voice was barely a whisper. "They say there are alien ships entering our solar system." Lisa felt her stomach drop. For 50 years, humans had been waiting for this day. They had always wondered if they were alone in the universe. Now they had their answer, and it was not the peaceful first contact everyone had hoped for. The main screen lit up with data from the deep space sensors. Lisa counted the ships and felt sick. There were more than 500 of them. Each one was bigger than Earth's largest battleship. They moved in perfect formation, like they had done this many times before. On Earth, President Karen Mitchell was sleeping when her security chief woke her up. She looked at the clock. It was 3 a.m. Ryan Cole stood beside her bed, with a tablet in his hands. His face was serious and worried. "Madam President, we have a situation," Ryan said. "A large alien fleet has entered our solar system. They are moving toward Earth." Karen sat up quickly. She had prepared for many things during her time as president. Natural disasters, economic problems, even wars with other countries. But she had never really believed this day would come. The day when humans would meet aliens who might want to hurt them. In his command ship at the front of the alien fleet, Supreme War Leader Vexthul studied the information about the third planet. His scaled fingers moved across the control panel as he read about the humans who lived there. They were young and weak. They had only left their home planet a few hundred years ago. Most of them still lived on the surface of their world like animals. Vexthul had conquered 17 star systems for the Zephyrian Empire. Each time had been the same. His fleet would arrive, demand surrender, and destroy anyone who refused. Usually the fighting was over in a few days. These humans would be no different. He opened a communication channel to all the ships in his fleet. "Warriors of the Empire," he said in his deep voice. "We approach another primitive world. These mammals think they rule this system, but they will learn to serve us or die. Prepare your weapons." Back on Ceres Alpha, Jake had called together all the station workers. There were only 43 people living on the mining station, but they were tough and smart. They had to be to survive in the cold emptiness of space. "The aliens sent us a message," Jake told them. "They want us to surrender in 72 hours or they will attack Earth." An old miner named Bill Carter stood up. He had gray hair and scars on his hands from 30 years of working with dangerous equipment. "What does Earth Command want us to do?" he asked. "They want us to evacuate," Jake said. "Get on the emergency ships and head back to Earth or Mars." Bill laughed, but it was not a happy sound. "Earth is 200 million miles away. Those alien ships will get there long before we do. If we run now, we will just be running to our deaths." A young engineer named Sally Davis raised her hand. "What if we do not run?" she asked. "What if we stay and fight?" Everyone looked at her like she was crazy. They were miners and engineers, not soldiers. They had tools and equipment for digging up rocks, not weapons for fighting alien spaceships. But Jake was thinking about what Sally had said. He looked around the room at all the equipment they used every day. The big machines that could break apart asteroids, the ships that could move huge chunks of rock, the magnetic launchers that could shoot things across space at incredible speeds. Maybe we can fight, Jake said slowly. Not like soldiers, but like miners. We know this place better than anyone. We know every rock, every hiding spot, every dangerous area. The aliens do not know any of that. Lisa Torres was having the same thoughts on Luna Base. She was reading reports from all over the asteroid belt. There were more than 2,000 people living and working out there. Most of them were tough, independent folks who had chosen to make their homes in the most dangerous place in the solar system. Get me a connection to all the mining stations, she told her communications officer. I want to talk to everyone in the belt at the same time. When the connection was ready, Lisa looked into the camera. She knew that people all over the asteroid belt were watching her. People who had spent years learning how to survive in space. People who knew how to make things work when everything went wrong. This is Admiral Torres, she said. You all know about the alien fleet by now. Earth Command wants you to evacuate, but I'm giving you a choice. You can leave if you want to. No one will think less of you. But if you want to stay and defend our home, we can use your help. She paused and looked at the reports from the belt. So many people, so much equipment, so many places to hide. These aliens think we are weak because we are young, Lisa continued. They think they can scare us into giving up, but they have never fought miners before. They have never tried to conquer people who make their living in the most dangerous place in the solar system. If they want Earth, they will have to go through us first. All across the asteroid belt, people were making their choice. Some packed their things and headed for the inner planets, but most stayed. They looked at their tools and their machines and their knowledge of space, and they decided to fight. The Zephyrian fleet kept moving toward Earth, confident and strong. They had no idea what was waiting for them in the asteroid belt. Sam Rodriguez had not slept in 2 days. He stood in the engine room of the asteroid palace looking at the biggest machine he had ever built. For 15 years, he had been turning this rock into something special. What started as a simple mining operation was now something much more dangerous. The machine was called a magnetic accelerator. It was designed to shoot chunks of metal across space at amazing speeds. Sam had built it to launch mining equipment to other asteroids. Now he was thinking about what else it could launch. How fast can this thing shoot something? Asked Maria Santos, the military officer who had arrived from Earth 3 days ago. Sam wiped the grease from his hands and smiled. Fast enough to punch a hole through anything that gets in the way, he said. We use it to send supply containers to stations. 50,000 miles away, they arrive in less than an hour. Maria looked impressed. She had come to the asteroid belt expecting to find scared miners who needed protection. Instead, she found engineers who had built weapons without even knowing it. All around the asteroid belt, people were having the same realization. Beth Davis commanded a patrol ship called New Frontier. Her job was to catch pirates and settle disputes between mining claims. She had been doing it for 8 years, and her crew knew how to fight in space better than anyone. Captain, we just got word from 3 more mining stations, said her communications officer, Pete Wilson. They want to join our patrol group. Beth looked out the window of her ship. She could see the lights of mining stations scattered across the darkness. Each one was now a potential fortress. Each one was full of people who knew how to survive in the most dangerous place in the solar system. How many ships do we have now? She asked. 47 combat-capable vessels, Pete answered. Most of them are converted cargo haulers and mining ships. But they all have experienced crews. Beth nodded. The Earth Navy had bigger ships and better weapons, but they had never fought a real battle in deep space. Her people had been handling dangerous situations in zero gravity for years. They knew how to move fast, think quickly, and use whatever they had to get the job done. On the asteroid Vesta, Alan Murphy was working on a different kind of weapon. He was not building something to destroy enemy ships. He was building something to see them coming from very far away. Alan was a communications expert. He had spent 10 years connecting all the mining stations in the belt with a network of radio transmitters and receivers. Now he was turning that network into the biggest radar system ever built. If we link all the stations together, he explained. To his assistant, Carol Green, we can track every ship in the solar system. The aliens will not be able to hide from us. Carol looked at the calculations on her computer screen. This will let us see them coming from millions of miles away, she said with excitement. Better than that, Alan replied. We will know exactly where they are, how fast they are moving, and which direction they are going. They will be flying blind while we can see everything. The alien fleet was still moving toward Earth, but they were starting to encounter problems. War leader Kethvar commanded the advanced ships. He was confident that his force could sweep away any resistance they met. His ships moved in the traditional formation that the Zephyrian Empire had used for hundreds of years. It had worked against every enemy they had ever faced. The formation put the biggest, most powerful ships in front, with smaller support vessels protecting their flanks. But as they entered the asteroid belt, Kethvar began to realize that this was unlike any battlefield he had ever seen. The space around him was filled with rocks, some as small as houses and others as big as mountains. Many of them were moving in complicated patterns that made no sense. War leader, his scanner operator reported, I am detecting artificial structures throughout this region. There appear to be installations built into many of the asteroids. Kethvar looked at his tactical display. Red dots marked the locations of human bases and mining stations. There were hundreds of them scattered across millions of cubic miles of space. He had expected to find a few defensive positions that could be easily destroyed. Instead, he found an entire civilization living among the rocks. How do we attack? Something like this? Asked his second-in-command, sub-leader Draktar. Kethvar had no answer. The Zephyrian Empire conquered planets by destroying their cities and military bases. But how do you conquer people who live scattered across empty space, hidden inside asteroids that look like ordinary rocks? Back on Ceres Alpha, Jake Harrison was coordinating with mining stations across the belt. His screen showed a map with hundreds of green dots representing human installations. Each one was now a potential weapon in the fight against the aliens. Station Hygaea reports that they have finished converting their ore processing plant, announced Sally Davis. They can now manufacture explosive charges using raw materials from their mining operations. Good, Jake replied. What about Station Juno? They have rigged their mass driver to launch attack drones, Sally said. The drones are disguised to look like mining equipment, but they carry powerful bombs. Jake smiled. The aliens thought they were fighting primitive humans who barely knew how to travel between planets. They had no idea that these humans had been living and working in space for centuries. They had learned to turn everything into a tool, and now they were turning their tools into weapons. Tony Baker was putting this idea into practice on the asteroid Eros. He was a maintenance chief who knew how to fix anything. He also knew how to break things in very creative ways. Tony and his team had spent weeks rigging abandoned mining equipment with explosive charges. To the aliens, it would look like valuable salvage that they could steal or study. But when they got close, they would discover that it was actually a trap. The charges are set to go off when someone tries to move the equipment, Tony explained to his team. The aliens will think they found something useful and then boom. His assistant, Danny Pierce, looked worried. What if they figure out it is a trap? Tony grinned. Then we have more traps waiting for them. We have been working in this belt. For decades, we know every rock, every hiding place, and every dangerous spot. The aliens are just visitors here. This is our home. As the alien fleet moved deeper into the asteroid belt, they began to encounter these traps. Ships that stopped to investigate what looked like abandoned equipment suddenly found themselves under attack. Asteroids that appeared to be empty turned out to be hiding powerful weapons. The Zephyrians tried to adapt their tactics, but they were fighting an enemy unlike any they had faced before. These humans did not follow the rules of conventional warfare. They fought like engineers, using every tool and trick they had learned from years of dangerous work in space. Supreme War Leader Vexithol received reports of the first casualties with disbelief. His advanced ships were being picked off one by weapons that should not exist. Mining equipment was destroying military vessels. Civilians were defeating trained warriors. How is this possible? He demanded of his intelligence officers. The humans appear to have militarized their entire industrial infrastructure, came the reply. Every mining station is now a fortress. Every piece of equipment is now a weapon. We are not fighting an army. We are fighting an entire civilization. Vexthel looked at his tactical display. The red dots representing his ships were scattered across the asteroid belt, trying to navigate through a maze of rocks and hidden dangers. The green dots representing human positions seemed to be everywhere. For the first time since the invasion began, the Supreme War Leader felt something he had never experienced before in battle. He felt afraid. Maria Santos had fought in 3 wars on Earth, but nothing had prepared her for this. She floated in the command center of Ceres Alpha, trying to coordinate a battle that stretched across millions of miles of space. The asteroid belt miners did not fight like soldiers. They fought like people who had spent their whole lives solving impossible problems with whatever tools they could find. Station Iris reports successful strike on alien patrol, announced Jake Harrison from his position at the communications panel. They used a modified drilling laser to cut through the enemy ship's hull. Maria shook her head in amazement. A drilling laser was meant to cut through rock, not spaceship armor. But the miners had figured out how to make it work. They always figured out how to make things work. Across the belt, Tony Baker was putting his latest plan into action. He had spent days studying the movement patterns of the alien scouts. They were predictable, always following the same search procedures they had used on other worlds. Tony was about to teach them that the asteroid belt was not like other places. "Remember, we want them to think this equipment is valuable," Tony told his team over the radio. They were floating near an old mining rig that looked broken and abandoned. But inside, Tony had packed enough explosives to destroy a small mountain. The alien scout ship approached slowly, scanning the mining equipment with their sensors. Tony watched from his hiding place behind a nearby asteroid. The aliens were careful, but they were also greedy. They wanted to study human technology to learn about their enemies. "Wait for it," Tony whispered to his team. The alien ship moved, closer, extending a mechanical arm to grab the mining rig. The moment the arm made contact, Tony pressed the detonator. The explosion lit up the darkness of space. When the light faded, there was nothing left of the alien ship except scattered pieces of metal floating in the void. Tony smiled and began preparing his next trap. Rick Thompson was taking a different approach to fighting the aliens. His ship, the Iron Mountain, had been a cargo hauler before the war started. It was built to carry tons of raw materials from the mining stations to processing plants on Mars. Now it was carrying a different kind of cargo. "Load another asteroid chunk into the launcher," Rick ordered his crew. They were using the ship's magnetic cargo system to accelerate pieces of iron and nickel to incredible speeds. The chunks were not fancy weapons, just ordinary rocks. But when they hit an alien ship at 50,000 miles per hour, they hit harder than any missile. Rick's targeting officer, Linda Hayes, watched the enemy formation on her screen. "I have a clear shot at their command ship," she reported. "Fire when ready," Rick said. The chunk of asteroid shot out from their ship like a bullet from a gun. It crossed the distance to the alien fleet in minutes, moving too fast for their sensors to track properly. The alien shields were designed to stop energy beams and explosions. They were not designed to stop a solid piece of rock moving at incredible speed. The impact tore through the alien command ship like it was made of paper. Rick watched as the enemy vessel broke apart, its pieces spinning away into space. He was already loading another chunk of rock into his launcher. Susan Clark was planning something even more extreme. She managed the mining operations on a small asteroid called 2087 Karen. For 20 years, she had been carefully hollowing out the interior, extracting valuable metals and minerals. Now she was going to use her life's work as a weapon. "Are you sure about this?" asked her assistant Ben Parker over the radio. He was safely aboard a ship several thousand miles away, along with the rest of Susan's crew. Susan looked around, at the tunnels and chambers she had carved from solid rock. This asteroid had been her home for 2 decades. She knew every passage, every structural weak point, every place where explosives would have the maximum effect. "I am sure," she said. "This is the only way to stop them." An entire squadron of alien ships was approaching her asteroid. They thought it was just another mining station they could destroy or capture. They had no idea that Susan had turned the entire rock into one giant bomb. She waited until the alien ships were close enough that they could not escape the blast. Then she activated the charges she had placed throughout the asteroid. The explosion was visible from millions of miles away as 2087 Karen turned itself into an expanding cloud of debris and energy. When the light faded, 6 alien ships had been destroyed, and 3 more were badly damaged. Susan Clark was gone, but she had taken a significant part of the enemy fleet with her. Her sacrifice would be remembered throughout the solar system. Paul Wright was treating the wounded at the medical station inside Asteroid Hygeia when the first alien prisoners were brought in. He had been a doctor in the asteroid belt for 15 years, used to treating mining accidents and equipment failures. Treating alien injuries was something new. The Zephyrian prisoners were scared and confused. They had never been captured before. In all their previous conquests, they had either won quickly or died fighting. The idea of being taken prisoner by primitive mammals was something they could not understand. Through careful questioning and the use of translation software, Paul learned important information about the enemy. The Zephyrian Empire had conquered 17 star systems, but every conquest had followed the same pattern. They would arrive with overwhelming force, demand surrender, and crush any resistance within days. They have never fought a long war, Paul reported to Admiral Torres during their daily communication. Their whole military is designed for quick victories. They do not know how to handle prolonged resistance. This information changed everything. The humans did not need to defeat the alien fleet in a single battle. They just needed to make the fight last long enough for the aliens to lose confidence and make mistakes. Nicole Baker was coordinating this strategy from her command center deep inside Ceres. She had been a logistics officer for Earth's military before volunteering to help organize the asteroid belt's defenses. Her job was to make sure that the miners could keep fighting for as long as necessary. "How are our supply levels?" she asked her staff. "Excellent," replied her assistant Mark Davis. "The mining stations are producing everything we need: fuel, oxygen, food, raw materials for weapons. We can keep this up for years if we have to," Nicole smiled. The aliens were fighting far from their home base, dependent on supply ships that had to travel across interstellar distances. The humans were fighting in their own neighborhood, surrounded by everything they needed to survive and fight. Chris Lewis was monitoring alien communications from his listening post on Eros. He had been a radio operator for most of his adult life, skilled at picking up weak signals from across the solar system. Now he was using those skills to eavesdrop on enemy transmissions. What he heard made him excited. The aliens were arguing among themselves. Their commanders were frustrated and angry. They were reporting heavy losses and requesting reinforcements. Most importantly, they were starting to doubt that they could win. "Admiral Torres," Chris reported during the evening briefing, "the alien fleet is in chaos. They are losing ships faster than they expected, and they cannot figure out how to fight us effectively. Some of their commanders are talking about retreat." Torres nodded. The strategy was working. The miners and engineers of the asteroid belt were proving that humans did not need fancy weapons or military training to defend their homes. They just needed determination, intelligence, and the willingness to use whatever they had to get the job done. In his command ship, Supreme War Leader Vex Thol stared at the tactical display with growing horror. Red markers showed where his ships had been destroyed or damaged. There were too many red markers, and more appeared every day. His perfect record of conquest was being destroyed by creatures he had dismissed as barely civilized. "How many ships have we lost?" he asked his aide. 47 destroyed, 31 damaged, came the reply. The humans continue to use tactics we have never encountered before. Vexithol felt something he had never experienced in 2 decades of warfare. He felt like he was losing. Nicole Baker looked at the battle report scrolling across her screen and allowed herself a small smile. 3 weeks had passed since the alien invasion began, and the numbers were finally starting to favor humanity. The asteroid belt miners were not just surviving against the Zephyrian Empire, they were winning. "General, we have confirmation from Station Vesta," reported her communications officer, Mark Davis. "Another alien supply convoy destroyed. That makes 12 this week." Nicole nodded. The aliens were learning that fighting in the asteroid belt was not like their previous conquests. Every supply ship that tried to reach their fleet had to navigate through millions of miles of hostile territory. Most of them never made it. The supply situation was becoming critical for the Zephyrians. Chris Lewis had been monitoring their communications from his listening post, and the messages were growing more desperate each day. "Listen to this," Chris said during the morning briefing. He played a recorded transmission between two alien commanders. Even through the translation software, the frustration was clear. "We need ammunition and fuel," one voice said. "My ships are operating at 30% capacity." "No supplies are getting through," came the reply. "The humans attack our convoys from hiding places we cannot find. They know this territory better than we do. Then we must retreat and regroup," the first voice suggested. "The Supreme War Leader forbids retreat. We must find a way to defeat these primitives." Chris turned off the recording. "They are trapped," he said. "They cannot get supplies, but they cannot leave either. Their pride will not let them admit defeat to what they call primitive mammals." Helen White was working on a different kind of victory in her laboratory on Pallas. She was a scientist who studied alien technology, and she had been examining the wreckage from destroyed Zephyrian ships. What she found gave humanity its biggest advantage yet. "I have figured out how their computer systems work," Helen announced, during a video conference with the other station commanders. "The aliens use a centralized network that controls everything on their ships. If we can disrupt that network, we can disable entire vessels." She held up a small device that looked like a modified mining charge. "This creates an electromagnetic pulse that specifically targets their computer frequency. It will not harm our equipment, but it will shut down their ships completely." Jake Harrison leaned forward on his screen. "How do we get close enough to use it?" Helen smiled. "We do not have to get close. We can build these devices into our regular weapons. Every missile, every kinetic projectile, every explosive charge can now carry this pulse generator. When we hit their ships, they will not just take damage, they will lose all power." The first test of Helen's new weapon came 2 days later. Alex Johnson was coordinating a supply run between mining stations when his convoy was attacked by alien patrol ships. Instead of running or hiding, Alex decided to try the new electromagnetic pulse weapons. "Load the modified charges," he ordered. His gunner, Carol Green. "Let us see if the scientist knows what she is talking about." The alien ships approached confidently. They had attacked supply convoys before and always won easily. The human cargo ships were slow and lightly armed. This should be another easy victory. Carol fired 3 missiles at the lead alien ship. They struck the hull and exploded, but instead of just causing physical damage, something else happened. The alien ship stopped moving. Its lights went out. Its weapons stopped firing. "Direct hit," Carol reported with excitement. "The alien ship is dead in space." Alex watched as the other enemy vessels tried to help their disabled comrade. But they were now vulnerable to conventional weapons. The remaining human ships in the convoy opened fire with everything they had. Within minutes, all 3 alien patrol ships were destroyed or captured. Word of the new weapon spread quickly through the asteroid belt communication network. Mining stations began modifying their weapons to include Helen's electromagnetic pulse generators. The balance of power was shifting dramatically in favor of the humans. Admiral Lisa Torres finally arrived from Luna Base with what remained of Earth's official navy. She expected to find scattered groups of miners barely holding on against superior alien technology. Instead, she found a coordinated defense force that was systematically destroying the invasion fleet. "Status report," she requested as her ship docked with Ceres Alpha. "We have destroyed or disabled 60% of the alien fleet," Nicole Baker reported. "Our losses have been minimal. The electromagnetic pulse weapons have been incredibly effective." Torres looked at the tactical display showing the positions of both human and alien forces throughout the asteroid belt. The red dots representing enemy ships were scattered and isolated. Many were marked as disabled or destroyed. The green dots showing human positions formed a defensive network that covered millions of cubic miles. "How did you do this?" Torres asked. "Earth Command expected the invasion to reach our planet within days." We fought them the way we know how to fight, Nicole replied. Like miners and engineers. We used our tools, our knowledge of this environment, and our refusal to give up. The aliens came here expecting to fight soldiers. Instead, they found people defending their homes. Danny Pierce had been one of those people defending their homes. He worked as an orbital mechanics specialist, calculating the movements of asteroids and spacecraft, but for the past 3 weeks he had been calculating something else entirely. I have been tracking the alien fleet movements, Danny reported during the daily coordination meeting. They are trying to bypass the main asteroid belt and make a direct run toward Earth. This news worried everyone. If the aliens could get past the asteroid belt, they would still have enough ships to threaten Earth directly. The planet's defenses were strong, but not strong enough to stop a fleet that had conquered 17 other star systems. Can we stop them? Asked Beth Davis, whose patrol ships had been harassing alien forces throughout the belt. Danny smiled and pointed to his calculations on the main screen. I have been preparing for this possibility for weeks. If they try to bypass us, they will have to follow a predictable path. A path that takes them through a very specific region of space at a very specific time. What is special about that region? Nicole asked. It is where we have been positioning our most powerful weapons, Danny replied. Mass drivers from 12 different mining stations, all aimed at the same point in space. If the aliens try to run past us, they will fly directly into the biggest trap we have ever built. The trap was enormous in scale. Mass drivers were machines used to launch cargo across space, but they could also launch other things. Things like chunks of metal and rock accelerated to incredible speeds. When multiple mass drivers fired at the same target from different directions, nothing could survive the impact. Pete Wilson was operating one of those mass drivers from Station Juno. He had been a cargo handler before the war, loading and unloading supply ships. Now he was loading projectiles that could destroy enemy battleships. Target coordinates received, Pete reported to the coordination center. Mass driver is loaded and ready to fire. Similar reports came in from 11 other stations scattered throughout the asteroid belt. Each one had a mass driver aimed at the same point in space, waiting for the alien fleet to arrive. Supreme War Leader Vexthal made his decision during what he thought was his darkest hour. His fleet was being destroyed piece by an enemy that refused to fight fair. His supply lines were cut. His warriors were demoralized. The only option was to abandon the asteroid belt and strike directly at Earth. All ships, he broadcast to his remaining fleet, prepare for emergency acceleration toward the third planet. We will bypass this cursed belt of rocks and strike at the heart of human civilization. The surviving alien ships, still numbering, in the hundreds, began moving toward Earth at maximum speed. Vexthal thought he was finally outmaneuvering the primitive humans who had caused him so much trouble. He had no idea that he was flying directly into the biggest trap ever constructed by human hands. Danny Pierce's calculations were perfect. The electromagnetic pulse weapons were ready. The mass drivers were loaded and aimed. The asteroid belt miners were about to show the Zephyrian Empire what happened when you threatened their home. Danny Pierce watched his computer screen as the alien fleet moved exactly where he had predicted they would go. For 3 weeks, he had been calculating their possible escape routes from the asteroid belt. Every path they could take led to the same place in space. The same place where 12 mass drivers were now pointing their deadly weapons. All stations report ready, announced Nicole Baker from the command center on Ceres. Her voice was calm, but Danny could hear the tension underneath. This was their one chance to end the war before the aliens reached Earth. The Zephyrian fleet was moving fast, trying to escape the asteroid belt that had become their graveyard. Supreme War Leader Vexthal stood on the bridge of his flagship, confident that he had finally outsmarted the primitive humans. His remaining 300 ships were more than enough to conquer Earth once they escaped this cursed region of space. Maintain course and speed, Vexthal ordered his navigator. We will be clear of the asteroid belt in 2 hours. Then we can finally destroy these mammals on their homeworld. But Vexthal did not know that every mining station in the belt was tracking his fleet. He did not know about the electromagnetic pulse weapons that could disable his ships. Most importantly, he did not know about the trap that Danny Pierce had spent weeks preparing. Pete Wilson checked his mass driver one final time. The machine was loaded with a chunk of iron that weighed 50 tons. When fired, it would accelerate to a speed of 100,000 miles per hour in just 30 seconds. At that velocity, it would hit with the force of a nuclear bomb. "This is Station Juno," Pete reported over the radio. "Mass driver armed and ready." Similar reports came in from 11 other stations. Each mass driver was aimed at the same point, in space. The exact location where the alien fleet would be in exactly 47 minutes and 32 seconds. Admiral Lisa Torres had arrived just in time to witness the end of the invasion. She watched from the command center as the tactical display showed the alien fleet moving directly into the trap. Years of military training had not prepared her for this kind of warfare. "How did miners and engineers plan something like this?" she asked Nicole Baker. "The same way we plan everything," Nicole replied. "We looked at the problem, figured out what tools we had available, and found a way to make them work. The aliens think in terms of fleets and battles. We think in terms of physics and engineering." Helen White was monitoring the electromagnetic pulse generators that had been built into each mass driver projectile. When the iron chunks hit the alien ships, they would not just cause physical damage. They would also shut down every computer system on every enemy vessel. "EMP devices are functioning perfectly," Helen reported. "When these projectiles hit, the alien fleet will lose all power, navigation, and weapon systems." Alex Johnson was coordinating the supply ships that would move in after the attack to rescue any human prisoners and salvage alien technology. His cargo haulers were positioned safely behind the asteroid belt, ready to clean up after the battle. "All salvage teams standing by," Alex announced. "We will be ready to move as soon as the area is secure." The minutes ticked by slowly as the alien fleet approached the trap. Chris Lewis continued monitoring their communications, listening as the Zephyrian commanders congratulated themselves on escaping the asteroid belt. "They still think they have won," Chris reported with a grin. "They have no idea what is waiting for them." 20 minutes before the trap would spring, something unexpected happened. Carol Green, who was operating sensors on Station Vesta, detected something that made her heart skip a beat. "Contact! Contact!" she shouted over the radio. "I am detecting additional ships behind the main alien fleet. Looks like reinforcements arriving from deep space." The mood in the command center changed instantly. If more alien ships were arriving, the carefully planned trap might not be enough to end the war. Nicole Baker studied the new sensor readings with growing concern. "How many ships?" she asked. "At least 50, Carol replied. "Maybe more. They are still too far away to get an exact count." Danny Pierce ran new calculations as fast as he could. The trap was designed to destroy the main alien fleet, but it would not be able to stop fresh reinforcements. If those new ships reached Earth, humanity would still be in terrible danger. "We stick to the plan," Nicole decided. "We destroy the main fleet and worry about the reinforcements later. All stations prepare to fire on my command." Supreme War Leader Vexthal had just received word about his reinforcements when the trap was sprung. One moment his fleet was racing toward Earth, confident in their victory. The next moment, the Yao. Space around them erupted in a storm of metal and energy. 12 chunks of iron, each weighing 50 tons and moving at incredible speed, slammed into the alien formation. The impacts were devastating. Ships that had survived centuries of warfare were torn apart like paper. The electromagnetic pulses shut down every computer system in the fleet, leaving the survivors helpless and drifting. Vexthal watched in horror as his flagship shook from multiple impacts. The lights went out. The engines stopped working. His mighty fleet was dead in space, helpless prey for the human weapons that continued to fire from the asteroid belt. "How?" Vexthal whispered as his ship began to break apart. "How does a species that barely knows how to travel between planets defeat the Empire's finest fleet?" The answer came from an unexpected source. Joe Stevens was a third-generation asteroid miner whose family had been working in the belt for over a century. His great-grandfather had dug coal from the mountains of Pennsylvania. His grandfather had mined copper in Chile. Joe had followed the family tradition into space, digging valuable metals from the asteroids. When the communication channels opened after the battle, Joe transmitted a message that would be remembered throughout human space. Because we have been digging and blasting rock for 300 years, Joe said in his calm, matter-of-fact voice. And we are pretty good at it. The main alien fleet was destroyed, but the reinforcements were still coming. However, something had changed in those ships. Carol Green was monitoring their communications and heard something that made her smile. They are turning around, she announced with excitement. The reinforcement fleet is retreating back to deep space. The surviving Zephyrian commanders had seen what happened to Vexthal's fleet. An entire invasion force, the pride of the Empire, had been destroyed by creatures they had dismissed as primitive mammals. The reinforcements decided that discretion was the better part of valor. Within hours, the last alien ships had fled the solar system, carrying word of an impossible defeat back to their home worlds. The Zephyrian Empire had found something they had never encountered before, a species that could not be conquered. Jake Harrison stood in the observation deck of Ceres Alpha, looking out at the debris field that had once been an alien invasion fleet. Pieces of enemy ships drifted among the asteroids, reminders of humanity's victory. Salvage crews were already at work, collecting valuable technology and searching for survivors. Status report, Admiral Torres requested as she joined Jake at the observation window. The asteroid belt suffered minimal casualties, Jake replied. 12 people killed, 37 wounded. We lost 2 mining stations and 3 patrol ships. The aliens lost over 400 vessels and their entire invasion force. Torres shook her head in amazement. Earth Command will want a full report on how this was accomplished. It is simple, Jake said. We fought them the only way we knew how, like miners and engineers. We used our tools, our knowledge of space, and our refusal to give up. They came here thinking they were conquering a planet, but they were really trying to conquer an entire civilization that lives among the stars. The battle was over, but the implications would be felt throughout the galaxy. The Zephyrian Empire had built its reputation on the quick conquest of primitive species. Now that reputation was shattered. Other alien civilizations would hear about the defeat and think twice before threatening humanity. More importantly, humans had learned something about themselves. They were no longer bound to a single world. They had built a civilization in the most hostile environment imaginable, turning empty space into their home. They had taken the tools of creation and turned them into weapons of defense when necessary. The asteroid belt miners returned to their work, extracting wealth from the scattered rocks of space. But they carried with them the knowledge that they were more than just miners and engineers. They were the guardians of human civilization, protectors of Earth and all the worlds that humans would one day call home. In the deep void between Mars and Jupiter, where humans had learned to make something from nothing, the galaxy had learned a valuable lesson. Any species that wanted to threaten Earth would have to get past the asteroid belt first. And the people who lived there had just proven that they were very good at stopping unwelcome visitors. The Zephyrian Empire had come to conquer Earth, but they never made it past the asteroid belt. And in the darkness of space, human civilization continued to grow, protected by those who had chosen to make their homes among the stars.